The military aircraft in Taganrog is a favorite target for Ukrainian drones. Yesterday, the Ukrainian Armed Forces and Ukrainian intelligence managed to attack military facilities in Taganrog using American ATACMS missiles, S-200 missiles, and Palyanitsya drones, Forbes reports. The source suggests that Kiev used not only American missiles, but also the latest Palyanitsya drones in the attack on military facilities in Taganrog. This is evidenced by a number of videos made by local residents near the Aviation Institute. Experts say that the use of the Palyanytsya drone against Taganrog is a logical decision by Kyiv. It is based on the A-22 sports aircraft, flies over 500 kilometers, and can carry a powerful warhead. Palyanytsya is ideal for attacks on hangars containing enemy A-50 radar aircraft. Experts say the Palyanitsya drone costs about $100,000. This is a very ridiculous price compared to the cost of a cruise missile. The drone arrives from the factory in a box, and before a combat mission it is equipped with a warhead and wings. Experts do not rule out that the drone is controlled by a GPS system. It is ideal for striking a small hangar. The source writes that while there are no satellite images, it is difficult to judge the destruction caused yesterday by missiles and drones of the Ukrainian Armed Forces. But it is obvious that the Ukrainians are still keenly interested in striking the Taganrog airfield and are quite capable of doing so with the help of the latest drones. If this was a Palyanytsya raid, it could be a harbinger of more. Ukrainian industry has been producing Palyanytsya in small quantities since this summer. However, according to Ukrainian Defense Minister Rustem Umerov, a new startup recently launched full-scale production of the drone. Recall, Russia vowed retribution against Ukraine, accusing Kiev of firing Western-supplied missiles on a military airfield in its southern Rostov region. President Vladimir Putin has previously threatened to launch a hypersonic ballistic missile at the center of Kiev if Ukraine did not halt its attacks on Russian territory using US-supplied ATACMS missiles. And one US official said that Russia might soon target Ukraine with another of its new Oreshnik missiles. Russia's 2022 invasion of Ukraine has left tens of thousands of dead, displaced millions, and triggered the biggest crisis in relations between Moscow and the West since the 1962 Cuban Missile Crisis. Yevhen, a former platoon commander of the Aidar Battalion of Ukraine, observes that Russian forces are currently grappling with a significant challenge, finding personnel to replenish their massive losses. He shared the information on Espresso TV channel. Finally, the Russians have almost exhausted their pool of people willing to sell their lives for money, noted Yevhen. Their attempt to increase the payout for human life has failed. They assumed they could recruit the poorest, but even that pool is depleting, and now they simply have to offer more. Essentially, the number of people willing to fight, especially in a war with such high risks for money, is limited. Beyond that, there are those who refuse to fight for any amount. The Russians have hit this limitation, which seems to have come as a clear surprise to them. According to Yevhen, Russia managed to replenish its army effectively for 2 consecutive years. In the fall of 2022, Russia conducted a forced mobilization which proved successful. This allowed it to hold the so-called Surovikin line with 500,000 mobilized troops. For 2 years, Russia also faced no significant challenges in recruiting soldiers by offering monetary incentives. For 2 years, the Russians have continuously replenished their staggering losses without realizing that their pool of recruits was gradually depleting, emphasized Yevhen. They addressed many of their manpower issues by recruiting large numbers of convicts. However, the supply of convicts is now running low, and for the first time in Russia's recent history, they are beginning to close prisons because there is no one left to incarcerate. Yevhen, a former platoon commander of the Aidar Battalion, explained that Russia initially focused on recruiting from economically depressed regions, particularly those with ethnic minorities. This approach allowed them to address 2 objectives simultaneously: waging war against Ukraine and systematically depleting their ethnic minority populations. For instance, in Buryatia, Finding a man of reproductive age has already become a significant challenge. Many small ethnic groups could face extinction because of this war, Dickey noted. He added that after exhausting these regions, Russia turned to economically depressed areas, offering increasingly higher financial incentives. Finally, recruitment efforts extended to Moscow, Yekaterinburg, and St. Petersburg, but even these resources are now nearly depleted. The former platoon commander of the Aidar battalion also added that Russia is currently facing a problem of where to get people to replenish their absolutely crazy, unrealistic losses. The US may give B-61 nuclear bombs to Poland or Ukraine in response to Russia's use of the Oreshnik missile. The national interest tabloid published information. The idea that the West would allow nuclear weapons to be deployed in Ukraine, which is not a NATO member, is essentially insane. Unfortunately, given how the war in Ukraine is developing, this cannot be ruled out. The United States has very powerful nuclear weapons that could be given to the Poles or Ukrainians, but B-61 nuclear bombs are probably the best option, the publication said. Warsaw said it was open to making their US-made F-35 Lightning II warplane fleet capable of carrying American-made B-61 nuclear bombs. More recently, in the wake of NATO's decision to allow Ukraine's military to fire American long-range ATACMS and British Storm Shadow missiles into Russia, the Russian military retaliated by firing its impressive Oreshnik hypersonic weapon at the city of Dnipro. The West has no active defense against that weapon, which is nuclear capable or anything that is comparable in its arsenal. Thus, when conversations about possible escalations with Russia occur, inevitably the nuclear canard comes up, the national interest said. With the recent use of Oreshnik hypersonic weapon and the Kremlin's subsequent declaration that Russia is moving a tranche of these devastating weapons into Belarus, Poland is again feeling the proverbial squeeze. And it isn't only NATO members, such as Poland, that are trying to get in on the nuclear escalation talk against Russia. The Ukrainians sound obsessed with the prospect of gaining nuclear weapons from the West. The B-61 has been a pivotal player in NATO defense policy for decades. B-61s have been stationed in Belgium, Germany, Italy, the Netherlands, and Turkey over the years. It can also be fired from the B-2 Spirit long-range nuclear stealth bomber, the F-15E, and, as mentioned above, the F-35. The B-61 has been referred to as a dial-a-yield because the severity of the explosion it creates can be adjusted from 0.3 kilotons to as high as 360 kilotons. These weapons can withstand supersonic flight and possesses earth-penetrating abilities for blasting through hardened structures. Multiple modifications have been created to make the B-61 one of NATO's best doomsday weapons. Russian ruler Vladimir Putin said that the appearance of the Oreshnik missile system in service with the Russian army minimizes the need to use nuclear weapons. By and large, we now need to develop Oreshnik rather than the nuclear doctrine because a sufficient number of these sophisticated systems put us on the verge of virtually eliminating the necessity to employ nuclear weapons, he said. The head of the Kremlin said that Russia does not strengthen the nuclear doctrine but improves it.